Hey y'all, it's Betty. Welcome back to another True Crime Tuesday on a Wednesday. I firstly want to apologize for this episode being super late, but this week was or is my fiance's birthday. Today is his birthday. He's over there. I just did not plan my timing out right to film my video, edit, and post. So that's why it's going to be late, but I'm hoping that I can get through editing it by today and posting it today. Have my fingers crossed. We have dinner at 7:30 for him for his birthday, so hopefully we can get through this. But as you guys can tell by the title, today we are talking about Kathy Page and her mysterious murder. This story was super interesting when I looked into it. It has so many little clues and just like frustrating almost. Well, not almost, very frustrating because there were so many mishaps on the side of the police. There were so many things that they missed. There were so many things like, what the fuck, why would you not even question or try him or have him as a suspect? Kathy Page was married to Steve Page and they had recently separated. She had filed for divorce a few weeks prior to May 14th, and it's gonna be 28 years in a couple of months. Well, no, next month. By next month, it'll be 28 years since this murder happened. And it's just insane to me that so much time has gone by. So on May the 14th, she had asked Steve Page to come over and watch the children. By then, he had already moved out of their home, and she told him that she was going to meet up with friends and that she was going to hang out with them pretty late. So she asked him to come over their old house, which was now her house, to watch their two daughters. And he did. He had agreed to it, and he kind of was like her last resort. A lot of her friends and her sisters even mentioned that she had called them asking for a babysitter before she had even called Steve, and that they had said that they had plans so they couldn't watch the girls. So in reality, she lied to Steve. She told him that she was going to hang out with friends, but really she had met a man from Beaumont. This all happened in Texas, by the way. I probably should have started with that. She and Steve lived in Vidor, Texas, and she had begun an affair close to the end of her and her husband's relationship with a man from Beaumont. His name was never stated anywhere in the case. He was basically taken off as a suspect pretty quick into the case. Also, some people have speculations that he came from a lot of money and was a pretty prestigious person in Beaumont. So they never really questioned him because of that. After Steve and Kathy had agreed that Steve would watch the girls all night, she went and she met up with her boyfriend. They went to a hotel and she asked her friend to cover for her. And this was not the first time that her friend had covered for her because of how jealous Steve was. Steve, prior to them even separating, had called her friends to confirm that she was hanging out with them before. And actually, Kathy had asked her friend to just not answer the phone. And either way, she still ended up answering the phone, but he hung up right away at 3 a.m. and she ended up just hanging up, going back to sleep, and that was the end of that. At around 5 a.m., a paperboy ended up finding Kathy's body in a car. The car was like basically the front of the car was nose down in a ditch not very far away from her house, and they ended up calling the authorities. The authorities showed up, and right away they saw so many weird signs about the way that her body was found in the car. So first of all, she did not have her seatbelt on, and because she didn't have her seatbelt on, if it was a true accident that her car ended up flying into this ditch from a car wreck, you would think that her body would be like facing against the steering wheel and there would be large injuries around her face or her chest, but none of that was found. The way that Kathy was found in the car was with her head back against the headrest and her legs were nowhere near the gas or the brake pedals. They were kind of just like back towards the actual seat, and she had bruising around her neck, showing that she had been strangled. She also had a broken nose. So right away they were like, this is weird. They realized that she did not die due to a car accident and this was a staged murder. However, the cops did not do a great job when they arrived to the crime scene. They were very not experienced, if you will, with these kinds of crimes, just because in Vidor, Texas, it's a really small town. I read somewhere that they had a population of about 13,000 people. So I don't think that they were very experienced with murders or anything of that nature. When the photographer came to take the pictures, he was taking pictures, but he forgot to load the film into his camera. So when they made it back to the police station and the whole crime scene had been cleaned up already, he tried to go ahead and resolve the film, and there was nothing there because he forgot to load it. And this was back in 1991, so you have to keep in mind that they were using film and he didn't load the camera. So he was obviously incompetent and inexperienced with any of that, and they ended up having absolutely no pictures of the crime scene. So that was the #1 error that ended up happening when they found Kathy's body, and there's many more to come after that. So the next thing that happened, which was interesting, around 5:30ish, 5:45ish, they went and they knocked on the Page's door because Steve ended up staying at Kathy Page's house because she never came home. And they knocked at the door, and he answered the door in his boxers. Now mind you, he did not live there anymore, so he wouldn't have any other clothes there than the clothes that he came with. And he answered the door in the boxers. Not only was that a #1 red flag, but he also answered the door, and before the cops could say, ask, or deliver any sort of bad news, he automatically said, "Kathy's not here, my wife is not here." And the cops found that so weird, but they really kind of brushed it off. And he was like, "Is this about her?" And they also mentioned that he stepped out of the door and kind of looked down because I'm telling you, the car was found really close to where her home was. So he actually stepped out of the house and looked in the direction where the car was found. So all of these sketchy things happened, and they ended up telling him that they found Kathy in a car, she had a car accident, and they actually ended up telling him that they believed that it was a staged murder. So normally when you're dealing with a case like that, that's not the news that you would deliver to the family right away, because you want to have an investigation before you start freaking people out. And a lot of people's theories in regards to why they told him that is because they wanted him to have some sort of reaction to it, which would have been admissible in court at that time. I believe it's still something that's admissible in court as far as like a confessional reaction, because they're not expecting them to kind of come outright with it like, yeah, we found her body, but it doesn't look like it was an accident, you know? So those are the first few things, and he overreacted when they ended up telling her that she was murdered. He threw himself on the couch and started crying, but one of the officers said that he flashed the light in his, like they had flashlights because it was still dark in the morning, and he ended up flashing the light in his face and there was no obvious tears coming out of his eyes. So they were kind of like crocodile tears, and so many people, you know, speculate and say that that should have been the moment that they came in and searched the house and kind of listed him as a suspect, or kind of at least like looked at him as someone of like a person of interest. And none of that ended up happening. They kind of just told him, this is the news, we just wanted to deliver you the news, we're gonna kind of figure things out, investigate more, and we'll be speaking to you again. So after he spoke with the police, Kathy's friend actually stated that Steve called her again around at 5:50 to 6 a.m. in the morning. So it would have been right after they had delivered the news that Kathy was murdered that he would have called her. And what he said when he called her was, "Is Kathy with you?" or where, something along the lines of, "Where's Kathy?" Like basically looking for Kathy. And a lot of people obviously speculate that he was just trying to use that as kind of like an alibi, like that he was showing that he was looking and concerned over her. But by that point, he would have already known that her body was found and that she was dead. So there were so many things that could have gone on record and kind of shown that he was just a really sketchy guy, but police never investigated or never looked through phone records to determine whether he did or did not call her and the time that he called her. Because when that was brought up, Steve said, "No, I called her at 3 o'clock in the morning, not at 5 to 6 o'clock in the morning." So that's kind of like a ridiculous accusation type of thing. But that was never even looked into. So we don't know what time he ended up calling Kathy's friend and asking about her, but according to her friend, it was around 5 or 6 in the morning, because she says that it was still a little bit dark out, but there was some light coming up. So she's thinking it was definitely between 5 to 6 in the morning. He ended up, after that, contacting his parents and Kathy's parents to let them know everything that had happened. And Kathy's family was actually the first to show up at his house. And when they came in, they said that his laundry was already in the washer machine, so he was already doing his laundry. And that was like another sketchy thing, like, why are you washing your clothes right now? And like I said, he was no longer living there, so that means that he was washing the clothes that he was wearing. However, his parents shortly after ended up showing up. His family showed up, and when that got brought up to them, they said, "No, we never heard any washer machine going off." So who are we to believe? Kathy's family or the Page family? Of course, it's like two sides. I'm sure people were speculating like, oh, you guys are kind of just trying to blame him, and then obviously his family would stick up for him. But there was also a minister that stopped by. I believe I read somewhere that he stopped by to use his phone or something like that, and he also stated that he heard the washer machine going on a spin cycle. So he was kind of like the neutral party in the story, saying, hey, yes, I did hear the washer machine going, and why would he be doing his laundry at Kathy's house after finding out that she was found dead? Also, he never even like asked to see her, which is like super sketchy, because they had 2 daughters together. Even if you're no longer with the person, you're going to want to like freak out, run to the accident because it's down the street, or want to like see the person that just died. You're not just gonna sit on your couch and cry. So it was all very, very weird. Later on, he was contacted because he was still the spouse, so he was asked if an autopsy could be performed on Kathy, and he said, no, I don't want her body cut open, please don't do an autopsy. But sure enough, her father ended up giving the authority to get the autopsy done, and they did end up finding that she was strangled to death, and also there was traces of semen found in her body. Some articles say that she was raped, some articles just say that it looked like someone had sex with her and there was semen found in her body, but the semen that was found in her body, it was clear that the person had a vasectomy. And her boyfriend, when he spoke to police, he did confess that he had sex with Kathy that night, but he did not have a vasectomy. Which, on the other hand, Steve Page did have a vasectomy a few months prior to Kathy's death. So is that a coincidence? I don't think so. So it's just all of these things piling up, pointing directly to him, like with a big flashy red arrow. But again, nothing is being deeply investigated. And I also noted that back in the 80s is when they started using DNA, and I think in 86 was like the first real case that what DNA was used to convict someone. However, in this case, they did not test the sperm for DNA. They didn't try to match it to Steve Page's DNA at all from what I was able to find. Kathy's father ended up coming over the house to again visit Steve, and when he walked into Steve's house and his family cleaning the carpet, and there was random spots that they were cleaning on the carpet, and when he asked what it was that they were cleaning, he said they said, oh, Steve had a grease accident. He opened up a can of grease, I believe it was, and he accidentally spilled some grease on the carpet. Weird. And I also feel like his family low-key knew, and it was at that moment in time where her father was like, no, like there's something wrong here, and he kind of got that fatherly instinct, like this is my daughter's killer, like this is crazy. So from that point on, he was determined to convict Steve of the crime. On top of that, they also tried to get a warrant for the search of Steve's house, and they weren't able to. When Kathy's father asked why he didn't allow them to just walk in without a warrant, he said, no, I don't want anyone in the house because Kathy's blood is here. She was shaving her legs in the living room and accidentally cut herself and bled on the carpet, because we all shave our legs in the living room on a carpet. Like that has to be the most comfortable space to shave your legs, right, ladies? Like, absolutely ridiculous. He was like, they're just gonna find ways to convict me. If they come into the house, they will find her blood here. So that's why I didn't want to let them walk into the house and search everything. Another thing that they found while they were doing the autopsy, on the autopsy report, they did report that she wasn't wearing any makeup or jewelry when she was found in the car, which was really weird to her sisters and her friends, because they said that Kathy would have never walked out of the house without makeup or jewelry on. She was studying to be a real estate agent, so they're saying there's absolutely no way. You know, when you're a real estate agent, you kind of have to not only sell houses, but sell yourself with your personality and the way that you look. So she was already on her way to becoming that person, and she would have never walked out of the house without any makeup on. They did mention that she had a ritual at night where she would come home, wash her face, and take off her jewelry and get ready for bed. Sometimes she would even shower before bed, especially if she had just been with her boyfriend. I would imagine that she would come home and would have showered. So when that came up on the report, it raised a lot of eyebrows as well. But again, that was never looked into as substantial evidence showing that someone who she was very close with, or Steve in general, was the person that would have strangled her. Furthermore, the autopsy also showed some blood stains inside of Kathy's clothes instead of the outside. So if she had been murdered at the crime scene, or because of the car accident, you would think that there'd be blood on the outside of her clothes. However, there was only blood stains on the inside of her clothes, proving that Steve probably felt awful about murdering her and wanted to get rid of the body, so he clothed her and took her out into the car and slowly rolled the car into the ditch. There was also mention about how Steve believed that because Kathy's boyfriend was from Beaumont, he was a part of something called the Beaumont Mafia. But when you research it, or when you read the articles, they are showing that there's no such thing as the Beaumont Mafia. So I strongly believe that it was just a lame attempt of shining the light away from him. However, I mean, obviously there was no leads to that. There was nothing to look into because there was just no such thing as a Beaumont Mafia. So the investigation went on. They couldn't find any other details in regards to her murder. So also on the autopsy, they were able to find the marks on Kathy's neck showed signs of someone who was left-handed, and Steve happened to be ambidextrous. So that was just, I feel like there's just so many things pointing towards Steve, but nothing could have ever been technically proven according to authorities. I read online that his family was friendly with the Vider community, the authorities and all of that, the police, but there wasn't anything that ever really determined that that was true. So of course, Kathy's family feels like they are siding with the Page family and doing them a favor for not looking deeper into this case, not looking deeper into Steve to find more clues or more DNA or more things to go ahead and get him convicted. Since nothing was done, Kathy's family did actually take Steve Page to civil court, which is a little bit different than what you would call just like regular court with an actual jury and the DA and all of that. Her family ended up taking him to civil court, and they actually won the lawsuit and won a little bit over $200,000 in basically fees and all of that, because they were able to determine that he was the person that murdered her. In civil court, he wouldn't go to jail. He would just have to pay the money to basically be accused of the crime. And that was basically the end of it. There was nothing ever furthermore investigated. They won the lawsuit, and that was pretty much it. Her father never gave up hope that something would eventually come up or that they would look back into the case. It's currently a cold case still. I don't think that they're looking any further into it or plan to, just because they don't feel like they have enough evidence going towards Steve, even though it seems like they have an abundance of it. I honestly think that the police was just incompetent, and I'm pretty sure if they did have any DNA in regards to like his sperm or anything like that, they've probably lost it by this point, because we're in 2019, like years ago. They could have tested that and compared it to his DNA, and if anything, just got in Vider's reputation back, or the police station's reputation back, from just being incompetent or careless. But they never did. So I would imagine that they most likely have lost the evidence that could have put Steve Page in jail. And her father actually ended up putting billboard signs up in Vider to kind of shed light to his daughter's murder. There was even a movie that came out that was inspired from these events. It wasn't about Kathy Page, but there was a director and writer who drove past these signs, and he states that he was inspired by them. He couldn't remember where he saw the signs or anything like that, but I'm actually gonna post them here so that you guys can see them too, because this was back in the 90s. So the first one said, "Vider police botched up the case, waiting for a confession, and this could be you." Those were the first 3 billboards that he had up at the entrance of Vider, and now there are other signs that are up, and they actually call out Steve Page, and they have pictures of Steve and Kathy, and it says, "Steve Page brutally murdered his wife in 1991. Vider PD does not want to solve this case. I believe they took a bribe. The Attorney General should investigate." James Fulton, her father. So he was the one that was kind of signing off on the billboards. It's really sad. Like I said, I'm gonna go ahead and post them up here so that you guys can see them. And the movie that was inspired by it, they just keep showing it as 3 billboards, but I think it's more than that. 3 billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri. So that is the name of the movie in case you guys want to check it out. There's still one billboard up near Viter, so if anyone were to drive by there, from what I've read, they still have a billboard up at the entrance of Viter. So her father still hasn't given up hope, but I just don't think anything else would be done for her at this point, 28 years later. It's just such a crazy whirlwind case and such a frustrating case because of how much evidence there is against Steve, and still it's a cold case. Like, it's just not fair, and it makes you really think, like, how do these things happen? How does it just slip through all of the cracks and just not question him? Or why did the police do such a shitty job in investigating or in actually capturing everything correctly? Not even taking pictures of Steve. There was someone that had mentioned that Steve had a scratch on his nose, and everyone in his family is of course stating that there was no scratches on his nose, but if the police had taken a picture of him, they would have known whether or not there was a scratch on his nose. They would have been able to recognize exactly how she looked when they found her in the car. They would have been able to see that there was minimal damage to the car. It's just such a frustrating case, but I thought it was a super, super interesting one. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this one, even though it was unsolved and kind of unsatisfying at the end. It's just such an interesting one. I encourage you guys to look into it a little bit more, just to find some details that I may have left out for the lack of a super long video. There's also things about her daughters. Unfortunately, I believe it was her youngest daughter. She ended up passing away due to a drug overdose, and the other one is only in contact with Steve and the Page family. She's no longer in contact with the Fulton family, which was Kathy's family, but she's still out there, and from what I've read and looked into, she hates the billboards, she hates talking about it. So there's that. I hope you guys enjoyed this True Crime Tuesday on a Wednesday, and I will see you guys back here next Tuesday if you're only into Tuesday True Crime Tuesday stuff. If not, I'll see you on Thursday on my fun, beauty, fashion related, more fun videos, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your week. I will see you next week. Bye!